If you've ever had that sinking feeling in your gut, like you're giving everything to a woman who barely notices, barely cares, you need to hear this. Because while you might be telling yourself she's just busy, or maybe she's shy, the truth is, there are clear, undeniable signs when a woman doesn't actually value you. And most guys miss them. Don't be one of those guys. Look, relationships can mess with your head, especially when you're into someone and you start bending over backwards, hoping they give you the same energy back. But sometimes, they just don't. And instead of walking away, we make excuses for them. We hold on, hoping things will magically get better. But guess what? It rarely does. What actually happens is we end up drained, confused, and stuck in a situation where we're not respected, appreciated, or valued. You know what nobody really warns you about? It's not the heartbreak that hurts the most. It's the slow, creeping feeling that you don't matter to someone you care about. That gut level discomfort when you start realizing you're putting more into something than you're getting back. And at first, you brush it off. You tell yourself you're overthinking. Maybe she's having a bad week. Maybe you caught her at the wrong time. But deep down, you can feel it. Something's off. The energy isn't the same. The little things don't add up. And when you really start paying attention, you'll notice that the signs have been there all along. It's just easier not to see them when you're emotionally invested. It's like being stuck in a room where someone keeps turning down the volume on your voice. You speak, you reach out, you offer your time, your energy, your care, but it barely lands. You get half smiles, dry responses, distracted glances. You keep trying, adjusting your tone, your approach, giving more of yourself, hoping that maybe this time it'll click. Maybe this time she'll see what you're worth. But here's the truth. No one likes to say out loud. When a woman values you, you don't have to fight to matter. You don't have to jump through hoops or play mind games just to get basic effort in return. She just does it. She shows up, she makes time, she listens, and she treats you like you're important. Because to her, you are. The problem is, a lot of people don't recognize what it actually looks like when someone doesn't value them. It's not always big, dramatic moments. Sometimes it's not about loud arguments or obvious rejection. It's about the little things, the repeated behaviors that slowly chip away at your confidence without you even noticing it's happening. And the reason people stay in these one sided situations for so long is because it feels safer to hold on to hope than to face reality. It's easier to believe she's just busy or going through something than to admit you're not a priority in her life. Because if you admit that, it forces you to make a choice. And sometimes making a choice is scarier than staying stuck. It starts with attention. Pay close attention to how she behaves when you're around. Is she present, or is she somewhere else entirely? Think about those moments where you're talking and she's nodding, maybe saying, uh-huh, here and there. But her eyes are on her phone, or worse, wandering around the room. That's not what it looks like when someone's interested. And it doesn't matter how much she claims to care about you. Actions always speak louder than words. If you're sitting across from someone who would rather scroll through social media than listen to what you're saying, that's a pretty solid clue you're not as high on her list as you think. Then, it bleeds into priorities. Notice who's always doing the chasing. If it's always you sending the first text, you making the plans, you calling to check in, ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped? Would she reach out, or would the silence stretch on for days, maybe weeks? You see, when people value you, they don't let you slip away unnoticed. They don't let the connection fade without fighting for it. They check in, they make time, even in small ways. And it's not about someone having to be glued to you 24/7. It's about effort. If someone consistently leaves you wondering where you stand, the answer is probably not where you'd hoped. There's also this thing people do when they don't value you. They become emotionally unavailable. And here's where it gets tricky, because it's not always coldness or outright dismissal. Sometimes it's subtle. She'll keep conversations shallow, avoid deeper topics, and deflect anything personal. You might notice that she shares more with her friends or on social media than she ever does with you. And no, it's not because you're not a safe space or because she's too private. It's because she's emotionally invested elsewhere. You'll feel like you're standing outside a locked door, knocking, while she chats and laughs with others inside, and it eats at you because you start wondering what it is you're missing, why you don't get to see that side of her. But what really drives this home is when she starts using you, not in an obvious, cruel way. No, it's more calculated than that. She'll hit you up when it's convenient for her, when she needs a favor or when she's bored or when the person she really wants to hear from isn't answering. Suddenly, you're important. She'll reply fast, she'll be sweet, she'll maybe even throw in a compliment or two. And just like that, you'll find yourself hoping again, thinking maybe she's finally warming up, maybe this is a turning point. But the minute she gets what she wants, the warmth vanishes. She stops replying. The conversation dies, and you're left staring at your phone, confused, wondering what just happened. It's a pattern, a cycle. And the worst part is how easy it is to normalize it. You start telling yourself, well, at least she's still talking to me. Or maybe it's my fault for not being more interesting. But none of that's true. It's not your job to constantly audition for someone's attention, especially when they're giving you the bare minimum. You should never have to convince someone to value you, because when someone does, it's obvious. It's in their tone, their actions, the way they show up without being asked. It's also in the way they speak about you. Listen to how she talks about you when you're around, and more importantly, when you're not. Is it respectful, supportive, or does she make jokes at your expense? Subtle digs dressed up as sarcasm or humor. It might seem harmless at first, but those little comments reveal a lot. They show whether she sees you as someone she respects or just someone she tolerates. And the thing is, people don't mock what they admire. If she's constantly belittling you, brushing off your opinions, or making you feel small, even in playful ways, it's not affection. It's a quiet, steady form of disrespect. And I get it. It's tempting to overlook these things when you care about someone. It's easier to see them as quirks or bad habits or things she'll grow out of. But ignoring those signs now only leads to bigger problems later. Because one day you'll wake up and realize you don't recognize yourself anymore. You'll be so used to shrinking, to apologizing, to settling for crumbs, that you'll forget what it feels like to be with someone who actually values you. And that's not a place you want to end up. The thing about value is, it's not something you're supposed to negotiate for. It's either there or it isn't. And when it comes to relationships, or even just early romantic interest, a woman will show you where you stand through the small, day-to-day things. And if you're paying attention, you'll realize that the behaviors you've been excusing are actually warnings. It's like driving a car with the check engine light on and convincing yourself it's just a glitch. But deep down, you know something's wrong. You just don't want to deal with what fixing it really means. One of the biggest giveaways is effort, or really the lack of it. See, when someone values you, effort becomes natural. It's not forced. It's not a chore. It's not a, well, I guess I'll see him since he keeps asking. Number. It's mutual. She wants to be around you. She finds reasons to reach out. She remembers the little things you tell her and brings them up later. Not because she's trying to impress you, but because she genuinely paid attention. And if you think about it, you've probably had moments where it felt like pulling teeth just to get her to hang out. Plans always seem to fall through, excuses pile up, and she's always too busy until you see her out with friends or posting selfies or doing all these things she apparently did have time for. That disconnect between words and actions is one of the clearest signs you're dealing with someone who doesn't value you. And no, being busy is not a reason to completely disappear on someone you supposedly care about. Everyone has responsibilities, work, stress, but people make time for what matters to them. Even if it's a simple, hey, it's a crazy day, but I'm thinking about you, I'll call you tomorrow. That takes 10 seconds. It's not about grand gestures, it's about consistency. If you constantly feel like you're chasing someone who only shows up when it's convenient for them, that's not a relationship. That's you being an option. and options get replaced the moment something new, more exciting, or easier comes along. You'll also start to notice how quickly she dismisses your feelings. If you bring up something that bothered you, something that made you feel unimportant or disrespected, pay attention to how she reacts. Does she get defensive? Does she flip the blame back onto you? Does she act like you're overreacting or worse? Make it seem like it's your fault for feeling that way? This is emotional invalidation, and it's one of the most frustrating behaviors to deal with because it leaves you second guessing yourself. You start wondering if maybe you are too sensitive or needy or unreasonable, but you're not. Wanting to be treated with basic kindness and respect isn't asking for too much. It's the bare minimum. And what makes this behavior even more damaging is how it gradually makes you adjust your standards without realizing it. You'll start letting things slide that you wouldn't have tolerated before. The jokes at your expense, the canceled plans, the cold responses, the lack of support. You tell yourself it's temporary, that it's just a rough patch, that she's stressed or distracted or going through a lot. And maybe she is. But here's the uncomfortable truth. People reveal their priorities in hard times too. It's not just about how someone treats you when everything's easy and fun. It's how they treat you when they're busy, stressed, or upset. If you're only treated well when it's convenient, that's not real value. That's conditional. And it means your place in her life is unstable at best. Then, there's the way she talks about the future, or rather, how she avoids it. When a woman values you, there's a sense of curiosity about what's next. It's not necessarily about making huge plans right away, but there's openness. Conversations about trips, events, or even simple plans next week come up naturally. If she dodges those talks, avoids locking anything down, or keeps things vague like, yeah, maybe sometime, without ever following up, that's a clear indicator. And I'm not talking about situationships where no one knows what they want. I'm talking about when one person is clearly more invested hoping, while the other is stringing them along because it's easier than being honest. You might also catch her breadcrumbing you. That's when she gives you just enough attention to keep you hanging around, but never enough to build anything real. Maybe she sends a late-night text here and there, flirts with you in public but disappears in private, or drops compliments when it benefits her. It's not consistent, it's not deep, and it's definitely not real interest. It's attention management. She knows you'll respond, so she dangles just enough to keep you from walking away completely. And you keep taking the bait, because those rare moments when she does act like she cares feel so good. They temporarily make you forget about all the other times she didn't. But here's the thing. You shouldn't have to survive on scraps. If you're always stuck in this loop of hope and disappointment, it's not because you're asking for too much. It's because you're asking the wrong person. And the longer you stay, the more you get used to this kind of treatment, the harder it is to remember what healthy, balanced attention feels like. You start accepting bare minimum behavior as if it's normal, and that messes with your head. It makes you believe that maybe this is just how things are supposed to be, that relationships are always uneven, that one person always cares more. That belief is dangerous because it leads you to settle, not just in this situation, but in future ones too. You start carrying the idea that your needs are too big, that you're hard to love, or that you should be grateful for whatever you can get. And trust me, the right person won't make you feel like you're asking for the world just to get a text back or have a conversation that isn't surface level. You'll know the difference when it happens, because it won't feel like a constant test of your worth. It'll feel easy, natural, mutual. And sometimes the hardest thing to accept is that walking away doesn't mean you failed. It means you finally decided to stop fighting for a place in someone's life where you were never meant to stay. Not everyone you care about is meant to care back. And while that hurts, it's also freeing. Because once you stop trying to prove yourself to people who don't value you, you make room for people who do. And they're out there. But you'll never find them if you're too busy chasing someone who keeps running in circles around you. You know what's interesting? When you finally take a step back and really look at the situation, you start to notice things you missed before. It's like when you're too close to a painting, all you see are random colors and brushstrokes. But when you take a few steps back, the full picture appears. And in this case, that picture isn't flattering. It's not the love story you thought you were in. It's a one-sided effort marathon where you're the only one still running. What makes it even more frustrating is how subtle it can be. A lot of women who don't truly value you aren't openly rude or aggressive. They don't come out and say, "Hey, I don't actually care about you." No. They keep you around just enough to feel wanted when it suits them. You might get that sudden burst of attention out of nowhere, a flirty message, a voice note at midnight, maybe even a thinking about you text after weeks of radio silence. And in those moments, your brain lights up because it feels good. It feels validating. But it's a trap. Because soon after, things slip right back to the same pattern. Back to you reaching out first. Back to excuses. Back to being an afterthought. And the cycle repeats because our minds are wired to latch onto those moments of reward. It's basic psychology, intermittent reinforcement. When you don't know when the next hit of attention or affection is coming, it makes you crave it even more. It turns what should be a mutual connection into an emotional slot machine. You keep pulling the handle, hoping that this time, maybe you'll win something real. But you won't, because this game is rigged. And deep down, if you're honest with yourself, you've probably already felt that. One thing people overlook is how these situations affect your self-esteem in ways you don't immediately notice. At first, you might tell yourself it's no big deal, that you're just having fun, seeing where it goes. But slowly, the inconsistency starts getting to you. You start questioning your own worth based on how much or how little attention she gives you. And before long, you realize you're overthinking everything, wondering if your text was too long, if your joke landed wrong, if you should have waited a little longer to reply. You end up turning normal, simple actions into these high-stakes decisions because you're chasing approval from someone who's barely participating. It's exhausting. And what's worse is, you probably stop noticing how much it's draining you because you're too focused on chasing the next good moment. Those little breadcrumbs of warmth, those tiny moments when she acts like she cares. They feel so rare and valuable that you cling to them like they mean something bigger than they actually do. But if you really take a second to zoom out, you'll realize those moments are meant to keep you hooked, not to build something real. And look, when people get used, it happens more often than we admit. But what makes it different here is when it's being done under the mask of, "I like you," or "I care about you," while the behavior says otherwise. That's where the damage comes in. Because if someone's upfront about not being interested, you can process that, move on, heal. But when they keep you in that gray area, where you're never sure if you're wanted or just convenient, it messes with your ability to trust your own instincts. You'll start ignoring your gut feelings. That little voice that quietly tells you something isn't right, that this isn't how it's supposed to feel. And ignoring that voice over and over trains you to distrust yourself. It teaches you to override your own boundaries, to settle for less than you deserve, to convince yourself that if you just stick it out a little longer, things will turn around. But they rarely do. And you know what's crazy? Most of the time, the moment you stop chasing, everything shifts. It's like clockwork. The second you pull your energy back, stop replying so fast, stop reaching out first, stop saying yes to every last-minute invite, suddenly she notices. Not because she's realized your worth, but because the attention she was used to receiving is now missing. And sometimes she'll come running back, acting sweet, asking what's wrong, pretending to care. But here's where you have to be careful, because this isn't love, it's control. It's about keeping you in orbit, not about changing the behavior that pushed you away in the first place. People value what they fear losing. And if someone was never worried about losing you in the first place, it means you were never as important as you hoped. That's a harsh truth, but one you need to hear, because you deserve to be someone's choice, not their backup plan. You deserve to be valued not for what you can do for them, but for who you are. And if someone can't see that, it's not your job to convince them. It's your job to leave. The reason this is so difficult for a lot of people is because they've invested so much emotional energy into the potential of what could be. And potential is a dangerous thing. It keeps you trapped in situations that don't serve you because you're chasing a future that only exists in your mind. You start filling in the gaps, imagining how good things could be if only she'd change, if only she put in more effort, if only she realized how good you are for her. But potential isn't real. It's not love. It's not connection. It's just an idea. And wasting your time on potential means ignoring what's actually happening right in front of you. And the reality is, right now, you're not being valued the way you should be. If you were, you wouldn't be sitting here questioning where you stand, overanalyzing texts, replaying conversations, and constantly feeling like you're one step away from being replaced. That's not what being cared about feels like. That's anxiety. That's emotional inconsistency. And no one who truly cares about you will leave you feeling like that. It's strange how, when you finally stop chasing, clarity starts to hit you in waves. The same things that once kept you up at night now seem so small. The text you overanalyzed, the plans she bailed on, the little passive-aggressive digs she made in front of people. You start realizing how much peace there is in silence. Not the kind where someone ghosts you and leaves you hanging, but the silence that comes from no longer tolerating half-hearted connections. You stop obsessing about why she's acting cold because suddenly it doesn't matter anymore. And that right there is where your power comes back. The truth is, you can't teach someone to value you. You can't overextend yourself into being appreciated. You can't text your way into being prioritized. People either see your worth or they don't. And the ones who don't will keep using you in the same cycles of attention and neglect until you finally decide you're done. Not because you stopped caring about them, but because you started caring about yourself more. And that decision, to choose yourself, is what changes everything. It's in those moments when you stop answering every late night text, when you stop rearranging your life to fit into someone else's schedule, when you stop justifying bad behavior because of a pretty face or sweet words. That's when you break the pattern. And yeah, it hurts at first. Let's not pretend it doesn't. No one likes cutting ties with someone they had feelings for. It's not easy to admit that the connection you thought you had wasn't mutual. But staying hurts more. Staying chips away at your confidence, your self-worth, and your peace of mind a little more each time you settle for being an option. And when you finally step out of it, you see how different things feel. Healthy attention doesn't feel confusing. Real care doesn't make you question yourself. The right people won't make you feel like you're in a competition for their time or attention. They'll show up consistently. They'll listen when you speak. They'll make plans and stick to them. They'll be there in the hard times, not just when it's convenient or entertaining. And you'll realize how low the bar was set in the past. You'll notice how much energy you used to waste trying to decode mixed signals, when someone who values you won't leave you guessing. They won't breadcrumb you. They won't go cold the moment you show interest. They won't flirt with you one day and ignore you the next. They won't have you doubting your place in their life. It'll feel simple, not because relationships are easy, but because respect is, because effort is, because valuing someone doesn't require games. And that's what this really comes down to. Value is shown in actions, not words. If you constantly feel like you're fighting for scraps of attention, being strung along by empty promises, or left out in the cold when it matters most, she doesn't value you. And no matter how badly you want it to be different, no matter how good the chemistry might feel in those rare moments, you have to trust what you're seeing, not what you're hoping for. Because wasting your time with the wrong person keeps you from being available for the right one. And let's be honest, you didn't come this far just to end up stuck in someone else's gray area. You didn't put in all this energy working on yourself, leveling up, getting better at handling your emotions and setting boundaries, just to settle for someone who can't even be bothered to treat you with consistency and respect. You deserve someone who chooses you the same way you choose them. So if you're sitting there right now thinking about a situation like this, where you keep making excuses holding on to potential, chasing tiny crumbs of attention, this is your sign to let it go. Not because it's easy, but because you deserve peace more than you deserve another unanswered text. You deserve security more than you deserve vague promises. And you deserve love that actually shows up, not love that plays hide and seek. Because once you start valuing yourself the way you should have been valued all along, everything changes. You attract better, you stop tolerating less, and you learn that being alone is nowhere near as lonely as being half loved by someone who doesn't even know what they have. If you like this, watch this next video. You need to see it.